It's Michael. This is a video being a bit of a showcase of my workstation setup, which I've created from scratch myself by either designing and building from scratch or modifying off-the-shelf components. The foundation of it is a Lazy Boy recliner, and I'll detail why I've used that as we go through. The structural components that I've used to build out attachments, that's all T-slot extrusion. It's a 40-40, 40-80 and 80-80 predominantly. And some custom welded stuff, which I'll show as well, which was made largely because I didn't know better ways to do it, and I'd be interested in other people's ideas on how I could enhance what I've done, or how they might choose to do it as we go through. The basis from where I started was having permanent spinal injuries as a result of my years soldering. I'm an engineer and a doctor by background. I love working with things in a hands-on way, but also things that are very cerebral. I was at a point at one stage where I could no longer sit in a normal chair and work at a desk. I had to stop operating because I couldn't lean forward unsupported, and I began to examine what was available within the disabled sector for people who had much more grievous spinal injuries than I had. And what I came across was a series of devices designed around a principle of zero gravity positioning, which is kind of like a reclined lounge in an S shape. And I tried some of those, and I found the notion of having a monitor above me and a keyboard at an angle sort of facing up to the roof really odd. I couldn't adjust to it very well. So I decided to go down a path similar that I found functional. That's why I chose the Lazy Boy recliner as a seat to begin with. I wanted something that I could modify, and that from its starting position had a very firm upholstered base, but it's also what's called a rocking recliner. What that means is that in addition to being able to recline the back of it, you can actually rock the whole chair, as I'm doing here. Now, if I lift the footrest by one tiny increment, a ratchet will engage, which stops the chair. So I can actually rock it back and lock it in position. This means that I'm not sitting upright. I'm kind of tilted back a little bit, yet still in a normal posture. And that allows me to sit for longer without my back posture collapsing and with less pain. I don't sit in it and use it in the traditional sense like you would in a theatre, where you push the back all the way back and you're sort of laid out flat on it. When I replaced the arms, I stripped it apart, reinforced the sides in different areas so that I could fit the extrusion and then reupholstered around it. So there's wooden framing surrounding all of this, and that's on strong structure inside the chair now. The arm originally fit down the front and came up over. That's where this fits in as a replacement for that. So this gives me two major attachment points on either side. You can see here, at the moment I've got joysticks on it because I've been playing around with some games, but I generally have this here as a mounting point for any things like this that I want to put on. Occasionally I might have another desk on this side that I attach. At the back I have put an upright, which I use for a microphone, but also for the armrests that I've chosen to use. I wanted something that was versatile and allowed my arm to move while I was working. So these are from ErgoRest. They have a double pivot as well as a rotation on the actual rest. And that's a key thing. When you look at a lot of these at market, they're designed for people who are typists at a desk, and consequently they just have one pivot point, which means they move on a radius, a fixed radius. That makes them useless in this scenario. So if you do decide to look at ones like I have here, look for ones that have multiple pivot points so that you can move into and away from the mounting point, not just on a radius. They work for joysticks, or if I'm working on my keyboard. So I have one mounted on either side. With respect to the other attachments that I have, I fitted a desk on this side. So I use a locking cam and a slot cut in that allows it to shift in and out from the chair depending on what I'm doing and what I'm using. It's a piece of MDF that I've covered in leather. The keyboard tray is probably the hardest for someone to replicate because I've built this out of steel. I'll describe what I've done and why, and you could probably look at an alternative. It starts off a rotating point and a height adjustable mount that I've built. It was on a bigger system before this. I had a pretty large frame that I was playing around with before I moved things onto this chair. That's why it looks a little bit rough. The core of it is a round point that the whole tray rotates on. So that's a round pole here, and a plastic block inside that acts a bit like a self-lubricating hinge, and it sits inside the square steel tube. To do this today, you could print that device, or that fitting, I should say, and replicate what I've done. The next part of it, so in here there is a hinge that allows me to adjust the height and angle. So if there's any sag or problems in the alignment, I can correct it by rotating this knob, which stops the stop position. And I fitted another one here, which allows me to adjust how far in, so where does it stop? So it doesn't just keep pivoting around into your stomach and keep rotating around when you're trying to type. The one on rotation I think is necessary, but this adjustment I think you could do without. I've got a curved tube that leads in underneath the mount, which has allowed me to put the pivot point right at the front of the chair, and that works nicely. But you could replicate this with a straight bar straight out from there. It doesn't have to be curved. One point I will say is essential. When you build a keyboard rack that's rotating around in front of you, one, if you could find lower profile mount points than I've got, that would be helpful, because what you're trying to do is minimize the amount of space underneath it, so you've got room for your legs without having it too high to be how you want it. The key to getting this correct is to put this bar as far towards the back of the mount as possible, or the tray. If it's near the front, then your point of rotation is at the front. So when you set the angle for this, this is always going to be lower than it. Whereas at the moment, I can have quite a shallow angle on this, and the bar is still above my legs or far enough out that it's not a problem. So that does speak to one benefit of being able to get this as far forward as possible. If I used a straight bar, I would build my rest differently so that the hinge might even be further out than it, and the mount would come up, or it would be a bigger tray so that I could still have the proper height and angle. I hope that makes sense, but basically if you put the rotation point at the front, you will not have room for your legs and it won't work very well. My next iteration of this, which I'm planning at the moment, is to enlarge this with another angled section coming back, and I've got a bunch of things I'm designing for USB mounts, phone mount. I've already done a biometric one, which I'll bring up to a mount on here as well. I need a nicer tray. That's not dirty, it's just worn. it's hard to find a comfortable one that lasts a long time. I like mechanical keyboards. A 75% keyboard is what I've had to use as the balance here, because otherwise I don't have enough room width-wise for things like the joysticks if I want to be playing around with them. Alright, so that's the chair, and I'll talk about the other stuff in another video.